Black Waitress cried. I don't have any place to live. The billionaire's reply changed her life forever. What if you discover that the person sitting quietly in the corner of your restaurant, ordering nothing but coffee and pie, held the power to change your entire world? That's exactly what happened to Jasmine Brooks on a cold Tuesday evening in downtown Chicago. The 42-year-old businessman had been coming to Murphy's Diner for 3 weeks straight, always choosing the same corner booth, always leaving generous tips despite ordering so little. Jasmine, 34 and working double shifts just to keep her head above water, had noticed him but never imagined their paths would intertwine in the most unexpected way. As she wiped down tables that night, her phone buzzed with another message from her landlord. The eviction notice felt like a weight pressing down on her chest. Little did she know that the quiet man in the corner booth was about to hear the words that would change both their lives forever. Where are you watching from tonight? Murphy's Diner had been Jasmine's second home for nearly 6 years. The small restaurant on Michigan Avenue wasn't much to look at, with its cracked vinyl booths and flickering neon sign, but it was honest work, and the regulars had become like family. Jasmine had started there fresh out of community college, hoping to save enough money to finish her nursing degree. Life, however, had different plans. Her mother's cancer diagnosis 3 years ago changed everything. The medical bills piled up faster than Jasmine could count, and soon her dreams of becoming a nurse were replaced by the harsh reality of survival. Even after her mother passed last spring, the debt remained, a constant reminder of dreams deferred and promises unfulfilled. The businessman, who always paid with crisp $20 bills and never asked for change, intrigued her. His name was Michael Patterson, though Jasmine didn't know that yet. She only knew he was polite, well-dressed, and seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. He'd order the apple pie and coffee, pull out a worn leather notebook, and write for hours. Sometimes she'd catch him watching the other customers, a soft smile playing on his lips when he'd see families sharing meals or elderly couples holding hands across the table. Michael had built his fortune in tech, starting with nothing more than a laptop and a dream in his college dorm room. At 42, Patterson Industries was worth billions, but success had cost him dearly. His wife had left 2 years ago, taking their daughter with her, claiming he'd chosen work over family. She wasn't wrong. Now, evenings at Murphy's Diner filled the hollow spaces where family dinners used to be. Jasmine's troubles had been mounting for months. Her tiny studio apartment, barely large enough for a bed and kitchenette, was all she could afford, even working 60 hours a week between Murphy's and a weekend cleaning job. When her car broke down last month, choosing between repairs and rent became an impossible equation. She chose the car, thinking she could negotiate with her landlord. She was wrong. The eviction notice gave her 72 hours. 3 days to find $1,200 in back rent plus late fees, or find herself on the street. At 34, Jasmine had never imagined she'd be one missed paycheck away from homelessness, but here she was, wiping down tables and serving pie while her entire world crumbled around her. That Tuesday evening, as Michael sat in his usual booth, Jasmine's phone rang. The landlord's voice was cold, businesslike. "Miss Brooks, if you can't pay by Thursday morning, you need to be out. I've got people interested in the unit." Jasmine stepped into the storage closet, thinking no one could hear her. "Please, Mr. Rodriguez, I just need another week. I can get you half now and the rest by next Friday. I promise." But promises don't pay bills, and Mr. Rodriguez had heard too many of them. When she hung up, tears were already streaming down her cheeks. She didn't know Michael had heard every word. Something about her quiet desperation reminded him of his own mother, who'd worked 3 jobs to keep their family afloat when he was young. When Jasmine emerged from the storage closet, her eyes were red, but her smile was still in place. It was a skill she perfected over the years, hiding her pain behind practiced pleasantries. She'd learned that customers didn't want to see their waitress fall apart, even when her world was crumbling. "More coffee?" she asked Michael, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Michael studied her face for a moment. He'd spent enough years in boardrooms to recognize when someone was putting on a brave front. "Are you all right?" The simple question almost broke her composure. When was the last time anyone had asked her that? "I'm fine, just tired," she replied, but her hands trembled slightly as she poured the coffee. You know, Michael said gently, sometimes talking to a stranger helps more than talking to friends. They can't judge what they don't know about your life. Jasmine looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. Behind his expensive suit and confident demeanor, she saw something familiar. Loneliness. Maybe he understood more than she'd given him credit for. It's just been a rough day, she admitted, settling into the booth across from him. Murphy's was nearly empty, and her boss wouldn't mind if she took a brief break. Actually, a rough few years, if I'm being honest. Michael closed his notebook and gave her his full attention. I'm listening. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. She told him about her mother's illness, about watching the strongest woman she'd ever known fade away in a hospital bed while medical bills mounted like storm clouds. She spoke about dreams deferred and the crushing weight of debt that followed her everywhere. She didn't mention the eviction notice. That humiliation felt too raw, too immediate. I keep thinking if I just work harder, if I just save more, things will turn around, Jasmine said, wiping her eyes with a napkin. But it feels like I'm running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up. Michael nodded, remembering his own mother's struggles. What did you want to do? Before life got complicated. Nursing, Jasmine said without hesitation. I wanted to help people the way the nurses helped my mom. They made her last days bearable, dignified. But that dream feels pretty far away right now. As she spoke, Michael saw something beautiful in her resilience. Here was someone who'd lost everything, but still showed up to work with a smile, still treated every customer with kindness and respect. It reminded him why he'd started his company in the first place, to create something meaningful, to help people. Their conversation was interrupted when Jasmine's phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from her landlord. Final notice. Pay by 9 a.m. Thursday, or Sheriff's Department will handle removal. If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up. Jasmine's face went pale as she read the message. Her hands began to shake, and she looked up at Michael with eyes. Michael sat alone in the booth, staring at Jasmine's forgotten apron draped over the opposite seat. The restaurant felt different now, charged with the weight of her desperation. He thought about his daughter, Claire, who was about Jasmine's age when he divorced her mother. What if Claire had been in trouble and no one helped her? What if she'd been too proud to ask for help? Just like Jasmine. When Jasmine returned from the bathroom, her eyes were puffy but determined. She made a decision in those few minutes alone. She would work every shift she could until Thursday morning, hoping against hope for a miracle that probably wouldn't come. I'm sorry about that, she said, reaching for her apron. That was unprofessional. Being human isn't unprofessional, Michael replied softly. What did that text say? Jasmine hesitated. She'd already shared more with this stranger than she had with anyone in months. Something about his kind eyes and the way he really listened made her feel safe. But admitting she was about to be homeless felt like crossing a line she couldn't uncross. It's nothing I can't handle, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Michael recognized the proud tilt of her chin, the way she squared her shoulders despite the weight she was carrying. His mother had stood the same way when the electric company threatened to shut off their power, when the grocery money ran short, when the world felt like it was closing in from all sides. Jasmine, he said, and hearing her name from his lips surprised them both. What did the text say? The gentleness in his voice broke something inside her. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was a weight of carrying her burdens alone for so long, but the truth spilled out like water from a broken dam. I'm going to lose my apartment, she whispered. Thursday morning. I owe back rent, and I don't have it, and I don't know where I'm going to go. She looked directly at him, tears streaming down her face. I don't have any place to live. The words hung in the air between them, raw and honest and devastating. Michael felt something shift inside his chest, a familiar ache he'd felt watching his own mother struggle, watching his daughter cry when he couldn't make her soccer games, watching his wife pack her bags because he'd chosen profit over presence. How much? He asked quietly. Jasmine shook her head. I'm not asking you for money. I don't even know why I told you this. You seem like a good person, and good people shouldn't have to carry other people's problems. How much? Michael repeated, his voice firmer now. $1,200 plus late fees, she said, barely audible. $1,400 total. Michael reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his checkbook. Jasmine watched in stunned silence as he wrote carefully, tore out the check, and slid it across the table. Have you ever faced something like this? Let us know in the comments. This isn't charity, he said as she stared at the check in disbelief. This is an investment in someone who deserves a second chance. Jasmine stared at the check, her hands trembling so violently she could barely hold the small piece of paper that represented salvation. The amount was exactly what she needed, not a penny more, not a penny less. But it wasn't just money. It was hope written in blue ink, signed by someone who owed her nothing but gave her everything. I can't accept this, she whispered, though every fiber of her being wanted to clutch that check and run straight to her landlord's office. You don't even know me. Michael smiled, and for the first time in months, it reached his eyes. I know you work double shifts to pay bills you inherited from loving your mother. I know you treat every customer with kindness, even when your own world is falling apart. I know you dream of becoming a nurse, so you can help others the way others helped your family. That's enough. But this is too much money to give to a stranger. You're not a stranger, Michael said. You're the person who makes me feel human again. Do you know I've been coming here for 3 weeks? Not because the food is exceptional, but because watching you work reminds me why compassion matters. You serve every customer like they're the most important person in the room. That's rare. Jasmine's eyes filled with tears again, but these were different. Tears of relief, of gratitude, of something she'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. How can I ever repay you? Michael leaned back in the booth, considering the question seriously. Actually, I have an idea about that. But first, take care of your housing situation. We can talk about the rest later. As Jasmine held the check, she felt something shift inside her chest. For months, she'd carried the weight of her problems alone, convinced that asking for help was a sign of weakness. But sitting across from Michael, she realized that accepting kindness from others might actually be a form of strength. What's your full name? She asked. I want to make sure I can find you to pay you back. Michael hesitated for just a moment. Michael Patterson. But Jasmine, this isn't alone. This is a gift, one human being to another. The name meant nothing to Jasmine, but something in the way he said it made her curious. Patterson. Why did that sound familiar? She made a mental note to look it up later, after she'd secured her apartment and could think clearly again. If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. Mr. Patterson, she said formally, then caught herself and smiled. Michael, thank you doesn't seem like enough. It's more than enough, he replied. Now, go call your landlord and tell him you'll have his money tomorrow. And Jasmine, don't give up on that nursing degree. The world needs more people like you taking care of others. As Jasmine stood to make the call that would save her home, she had no idea that the quiet businessman who just changed her life was about to offer her something even more valuable than money, a future she'd never dared to imagine. 3 months later, Jasmine stood in the break room of Patterson Industries, adjusting her new employee badge with hands that no longer shook from stress. The path from that desperate Tuesday night to this moment had been swift and surreal, like stepping through a doorway into a completely different life. After securing her apartment, Jasmine had researched Michael Patterson and discovered she'd been serving coffee to one of Chicago's most successful businessmen. When he'd returned to Murphy's the following week, she'd been mortified, but Michael had simply smiled and asked if she'd given any more thought to nursing school. What followed was a conversation that changed everything. Patterson Industries was expanding their employee wellness program and needed someone to oversee health initiatives for their staff. The position came with full benefits, a salary that doubled what she'd made waitressing, and a company policy that paid for continued education. I don't have experience in corporate health, Jasmine had protested. But you have experience caring for people, Michael had replied. Everything else can be taught. Now, as Jasmine prepared for her first day in her new role, she reflected on how quickly life could transform when kindness met opportunity. She'd enrolled in evening nursing classes and would graduate in 18 months, fully paid for by her new employer. The crushing debt from her mother's medical bills had been restructured into manageable payments, and for the first time in years, she slept peacefully through the night. Michael had also changed. His evenings at Murphy's Diner continued, but now they included his daughter Claire, who'd moved back to Chicago to be closer to her father. Claire had been skeptical of her dad's transformation until she met Jasmine and saw how their friendship had reminded him of what truly mattered. "You save him, too," Claire had told Jasmine during one of their coffee meetings. "He'd forgotten how to connect with people. Helping you helped him remember who he used to be." The lesson wasn't lost on either of them. Michael's act of generosity had rippled outward, inspiring him to establish a foundation providing emergency assistance to service workers facing housing crises. Jasmine became the foundation's first board member, using her lived experience to identify families who needed help but were too proud to ask. On her lunch break, Jasmine often walked past Murphy's Diner. The new waitress, a young mother named Carmen, waved through the window. Jasmine had recommended Carmen for the job after learning she was struggling to support her family. The cycle of kindness continued, one person helping another, one act of compassion, leading to the next. As she returned to the office building that bore Michael's family name, Jasmine thought about her mother's favorite saying, "Baby, you never know what blessings are disguised as ordinary Tuesday nights." Her mother had been right, though Jasmine had never imagined those blessings would come in the form of a quiet businessman who chose to see her struggle and respond with grace. The elevator doors opened, and Jasmine stepped inside, no longer the woman who'd once cried in a storage closet. She was someone new, not because her circumstances had changed, but because someone had believed she deserved better and helped her believe it too. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Thank you for joining us on this journey of hope, kindness, and second chances.